This call is now being recorded.
My name's Trevor Kellum.
My name's Bill Meyer. My name's Van Zetchen.
And we're interviewing Daralea Smith. Daralea, what's your full name?
Daralea Harlow Smith.
Where were you born?
In Terre Haute, Indiana.
How did you end up moving to Marshall?
Pardon?
How did you end up moving to Marshall?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
How did you end up moving to Marshall?
Well, I actually was always from Marshall, Illinois, but all the babies at that time were born in Terre Haute, Indiana. So I never lived there, but that's where I was born.
What was it like growing up in Marshall?
It was wonderful. Wonderful experience.
Do you have any fond memories of it?
Absolutely. It was a small community, and everybody pretty well knew everybody, and it was the days when we could ride our bikes any place, and our parents felt that we would be safe. It was a whole different world because, of course, that was in the 50s. It was, we owned the Dog and Suds and Harlow's Market. So, and I lived right between those two, and it was just really a fun place to be. Lots of action, lots of people, lots of fun memories.
Who were your parents?
Daryl and Rose Jean Harlow.
Any siblings?
2 sisters, Cheryl Crocker and Jeannie Strom.
How many years have you been in Marshall?
Most of my life. The only time that I was gone from Marshall was when my husband was in the military. We lived in Germany, and then when we went to college, we left for a short time. And other than that, we've lived in Marshall all of our lives.
So what was it like transition from Marshall to Germany?
It was shocking for me because I was very young. I had just graduated from high school, and I remember Mr. Bill White used to say that we kind of lived in a bubble in Marshall, and we really didn't know what went on in the world, and he was right. I was totally amazed that all that had been going on in a completely different country, and all those people that I met, and it was amazing to me to go there, and it was a wonderful experience.
Did you have to learn German to go there?
No, the military was there then, and almost everybody that you dealt with could speak English, so we were fortunate that way, although I wish I had learned German, but it was lucky for us that we could still communicate.
So you came back to Marshall and then went to college?
Yes.
Where was that college at?
We moved to Albany. There was a new junior college there. Our math teacher, Robert Graham, I think he was the director of admissions, and he encouraged us to come. And OCC was very new then, and so we decided to do that and got rid of our general education requirements that way.
So did you start out working at or studying for a teaching degree?
Actually, no. I started out in interior design, That was a love that I had always had. And I realized partway through that degree that I didn't have a lot of opportunity for that, because at that time I had 2 children and I lived in a small community. And during those days, most of the interior design work was done in bigger cities, and a lot of times it was office buildings, hospitals, restaurants, things like that. And I didn't really see much opportunity to continue that. I would just basically have been working at a department store, maybe sometimes would hire interior designers, or even paint stores sometimes did at that time. And that's not really what I had in mind. And I had always said I was either going to be an interior designer or a teacher. So my advisor recommended, I was at Indiana State then, and my advisor recommended that I go into the home economics because I had so many classes already along that line. So I did my student teaching at South Vigo High School and graduated with a degree in home economics. But I realized after my student teaching that was not really the love of my life, and that I would prefer to work with elementary children. So I went ahead and got certified to graduate with a degree in elementary education before I graduated. But then I was afraid that perhaps that I wasn't well enough prepared. So I went, because it didn't require too many classes at that time to be certified for elementary. So I went back again and did all my methods courses in elementary, and then I got my job.
Did you start out with teaching kindergarten, or were you in a different level of teaching?
My first teaching job was in Hudsonville, Illinois, and I was teaching 4th grade. And I was finishing out a year for a teacher that was on medical leave. And then I got my teaching job in Marshall in 2nd grade. And I taught 2nd grade for 27 years.
So how did you
Go ahead.
How did you start teaching kindergarten?
Well, I had been on medical leave because I had been in a coma. So I had been off of work for a while, and when I came back, I finished out the year, and they had an opening for kindergarten, and I thought it would be a nice challenge to try kindergarten. So I actually knew of another teacher who was wanting the 2nd grade position also, and at that time she was having to move with the grades. And so I thought, well, I'll try kindergarten, and that would give her a permanent position. I had spoken with her mother. And so I did, and I loved the kindergarten team. They were really fun and an awesome team of teachers. And so I thought I'd give it a try, so I did that for 3 years.
What's your fondest memory of teaching?
Oh, just getting to know all the personalities of the students and just watching them grow through the years, through the school year, just seeing them grow intellectually. And then being from a small town, just watching them grow up, that's my fondest memories. And knowing so many students.
So when did you get married?
I got married after my husband went in the military, and we were afraid he was going to go to Vietnam. And so I got married in 1966.
Was that in Germany, or was it still in Marshall?
No, it was in Marshall. We didn't know at that time where he was going to be going, but he ended up going to Germany, which we were very fortunate for that.
So what was your husband's name?
George Clinton Smith.
Did you have any children while you were in Germany, or were they all born in Marshall?
No, we had one daughter born there, Kimberly, and the rest of our children were born after we got home.
You want to talk about your children?
Pardon?
Do you want to talk about your children?
Sure. Kimberly is a social worker. She has her master's degree in social work and it has her LCSW now. She has 2 children and 4 grandchildren. Her children are Emily and Zach, and her grandchildren are Morgan, Aiden, Sarah, and Gabe. Jennifer she's our second daughter. She was born on the same day as Kim 3 years later, July 13th. One was born in Germany and one in Mattoon. Jennifer born in Mattoon. And she works for the 5th Judicial Circuit Family Violence Coordinating Council. And she's married to a police officer, Randy Branson, and they have 3 daughters, Presley, Shelby, and Tessa. And Quentin, his name is Quentin Harlow Smith. Quentin means 5th son, and my husband was the 5th son, and that's his middle name. And Harlow is my maiden name, so he's named after for those 2 reasons. And he has one son, Kedrick, who graduated from Casey High School. And then we have a daughter, Megan Idle, and she is a widow. Her husband died in 2012, and her daughters are Madison Idle and Amada Idle. Amada's named after my mother. And I have now 15 grandchildren because my grandson, Zach, is engaged to a girl that has 3 children. So we have 15 grandchildren, and that is the delight of my life.
Do you have any great-grandchildren yet?
Yes, I have 4. Well, there would be actually, counting Whitney's, there would be 7 great-grandchildren.
So what's your fondest memory of your children?
Of my personal children?
Yes.
Well, Kim and Jenny were born 3 years apart, and then about 10 years later, I have the other 2. So in a way, they kind of were raised in 2 different time periods of our life, but we were all in the home at the same time as well, and it was a big thrill for the older girls when the little ones came home. Just watching them grow up, and we just had many fun memories. We're very close as a family, and I've always done a lot of family-oriented activities, vacations, and those kinds of things, and we continue to do that.
So since you were born in the 1950s, if I believe I'm correct, what were the fads like then, and how have they changed?
Oh, they've changed a lot. The 50s was kind of when Elvis Presley was, they were really concerned about him, and they would only film him from the waist up because they thought he was a little too suggestive. They were much more cautious about movies that they put out. You see things now that are just stunning and disgusting, in my opinion. I don't know, it just seemed more like, of course I was a child, but happy, carefree days, and we would ride our bikes to Caldwell's Dime Store and get a nickel's worth of candy from the little sack of candy, and nobody really worried about that. You could go to Martin's drugstore and they'd let you pick up a comic book, and you could sit at the counter and order ice cream or a lemon Coke and read their comic books for free. And I mean, it was just such a different time than it is now. I know myself, I worry a lot about my grandkids because of everything that we hear and see in the news and everything now. We would trick or treat all week long. We would just take a sack and go by ourselves, my friend and I, and just wander around and dress up and trick or treat. And you just can't do those things now. And I think that's sad. We had the Dog and Suds, which was the drive-in restaurants with the car hops, and of course my parents owned it, so that was a lot of fun. And that was a big cruise route for all the guys in town. We would cruise around the Tasty Cruise and the Dog and Suds, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it just doesn't seem like the kids have that as much anymore. After ball games, we would go up to, it's Marshall Family Restaurant now, but it was called Tom's Cafe then. We would, almost everybody, the bus would just drop us off there. We would take a bus to an away game, and the bus would drop us off, and you could order like French fries and a Coke or whatever you wanted, and like kind of continue the enthusiasm of the night. And when we would go to movies, like our big deal would be to go to a movie on Saturday night. And we would dress up like people do for church, or did at that time for church. Suit and tie for a guy, and the girls would have on a nice dress and high heels just to go to a movie. I mean, you look at how people dress now in comparison, and that is a big change. Just lots of changes.
Did the badge change between your childhood and your children's childhood?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, they have. And some things for good, some things not, you know.
Can you name off some of the good things that changed?
I think technology, it can be good, and depending on how it's used, and that gives me such comfort to know that my children have a cell phone, and, you know, the GPS and being able to track your child, you know, for instance, if they've been kidnapped or it just gives you peace of mind when your family's on the road to know that they have that, you know. The social medias, it's just like anything. It can be used for good or for bad, but I prefer to see the good. I hesitated for a long time to get on Facebook because I had thought it was one of those sites where only negative things were put on. So it was a very pleasant surprise to me when I got on. I mean, there's still a few people that use it in maybe not the best way, but we do a lot of prayer requests on Facebook and a lot of inspirational things, and you get to see people's families and be in touch again, you know, with people that you haven't maybe lost touch with, and you get to share their joy and their heartache, you know, pray for them when they're sad and be happy for them when they get to go on vacation or something good happens in their life. So I think there's many good things about that and about this time.
So how did the technology change from your childhood to the present day?
Well, We had, when I was a little girl and I would go to my grandma's, my grandma Harlow's, she lived in Martinsville in the country. She had the old telephone that you would get, like one ring would be the lady up the road. They called it two longs and a short, two shorts and a long. However it rang, you had a certain sound, and Grandma would know if it was for her, or she would know if it was for somebody up the road. And some people, she of course would never let us answer it if it was for someone else, but some people would listen in, you know, on the party line. And then at our home we had well, I don't know exactly, it was the old black phone, and we had only 4 numbers, and you know, to like I said, then it became cordless phones, which was, well, for a long time we had a phone with a humongous cord on it so that we could go where we needed to go in the house. You know, when you have children and you're trying to get things done and you're on the phone. So that was kind of an advance. And then it went from that to the cordless phones and now to the cell phones. So, and then of course computers and iPads and all that. And I think that's a good thing.
Did you use a typewriter?
Pardon?
Did you use a typewriter?
Yes, I did. We had typing classes in high school, and I was never real good at that, but we did take typing.
So when the computer came out, were you glad about that?
Not in the beginning, I wasn't, because they wanted us to start bringing them into the classroom, and we were all a little overwhelmed by it. They were the big things that came in on carts, and they've come a long way from that. And we had to all take classes, you know, to learn how to use them. And it's so simple now, but it seemed a little overwhelming at the time.
So they were bringing in the big, bulky computers into classrooms at first?
Yes. In the elementary schools, yeah. And then we would have a meeting classes that we would, Paul Robinson would teach us how to use a computer.
So what do you think now that the high school has laptops and the junior high and North School, they have iPads in the classroom?
I think it's absolutely wonderful. As a little girl, I can remember thinking, I would ask a teacher a question, and they would say, go look it up in the encyclopedia. And they wouldn't answer my question. And I remember as a little girl thinking, I wish there was somebody that knew all the answers, that you could just ask the question and they would know all the answers. And, you know, that's how it is now. You can Google it, you can ask Siri, and it's kind of like a dream come true for me. Because anytime I have a question about anything, I Google it.
So when you cited stuff for like papers, did you have to go through a program?
I didn't hear the first part of that.
When you cited stuff for papers for college, what did you have to do?
Did you say cited?
Yes. When you cite stuff for a paper?
Mhm. We just had to list it. List our reference, you mean?
Yes.
Mhm. What reference was we had? We just listed them.
So how have the clothing styles changed from your day to ours?
It's much more casual and comfortable now. You don't, it's kind of like anything goes. And I think that's good to a certain extent. I do think in the past, some people, it's just like with anything. Sometimes people take things to extreme. But I think there were people a lot of times that did not go places, for instance, church, because they didn't feel like they had adequate clothes for that. And I think that is a nice thing that, people can be more casual now, and that, God cares more about the heart than what you've got on your body. I do think that we need to be maybe a little more modest than I think that's gotten a little out of hand myself. That, I guess that shows my age.
What was the big thing that happened around your childhood and your children's?
You mean in history?
Yes.
I think the biggest shock, I guess, or wake-up call or growing up time for my generation was Vietnam. That kind of shattered our little world of comfort, and we'll never forget it. And none of us will ever forget it, and the impact that it had on our generation. As far as go ahead.
Since you experienced that era of Vietnam, did you also experience the flower power age? Well,
I know a lot of people think because we grew up in the 60s that we were all, I had a lady say that to me, oh yes, she was an older lady, and she said, oh yes, you're a child of the 60s. Well, I'm a child of the 60s, but no, in Marshall, not really. You didn't really, you might see people kind of wear the clothes, some of the clothes, the influence, there's always that influence from Hollywood. And they may have dressed like that, but as far as, actual flower children, we didn't really have that. In Marshall, I don't think.
So this is a little off topic, but what was the Marshall Public Library like back then?
It was just a place full of mystery to me. I loved the Marshall Public Library. It was in the upstairs where the old city hall was in later years, and just I can still smell the smells. I can still hear the creak of the stairs. I loved going up those stairs, and then it was just like a wonderland to me. It was just full of books, and they would give you a chart. I remember I had a chart that for every book you read, you got to put a president on the chart, and I loved that. And I hung that in my room, and all summer long I would go to the library and I would get a book, and I had a little playhouse in the garden and a lawn chair, and I would sit under the shade tree and read my book under the shade tree, and it was very happy memories. Loved the library.
So when did it move to the position it's at now?
Well, actually, it first moved to the small room that's called the Dale McConkey Meeting Room. And I was actually on the board when we did the expansion I was on the library board. and we did the expansion into the building next door, and that was extremely exciting for me. I was very thrilled that we could expand to that size of a library.
So you mentioned the library.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that the library was smaller. Like, how small was it?
Which one? Mine? The one I had as a child was just basically one room upstairs. Like I said, where the old city hall used to be, kind of next to Richard Eubank's office there, down in there above the chamber building. And the Dale McConkey meeting room, the present library now, where the Dale McConkey meeting room, the restrooms, and straight back, that was the size of the library after that. And then we expanded over into the other room. And it just continues to get better and better.
So the library changed a lot over time?
Oh, absolutely. Still a wonderful place to go, and dedicated employees, and wonderful programs. It's just continues to get better all the time. Very proud of it.
So, during your time and then present day, what's changed about dating?
Oh my, a lot. During my era, the girls did not call the boys. The boys called the girls and asked them to go out on a date. And we actually went on a date. We would, very common thing would be for him to come pick you up. Like I said, you would dress up in church clothes and high heels, and we would go a lot of times to, and almost every Saturday night we'd go to a movie in Terre Haute at the Indiana Theater, or the Grand Theater, which is gone now. And then we might go, after McDonald's opened, a lot of times it was common to go over to McDonald's to get something to eat after you go to the movie. And it's just, I mean, look at the size of the theaters now and how many options that they have. And nobody dresses up really to go to a movie. And the prices are ridiculous for, we used to get, and my husband and I still talk about it, he would have $5 and he would put gas in the car, he would pay our way in the movie, and he'd give us something to eat after at McDonald's on $5. And he might even have change left. And now the price of popcorn, and I just can't get over it, the price of popcorn and drinks and the concessions. I mean, I know they have to pay their overhead, and the prices are high, you know, to get in movies too, but I think the popcorn and the drinks get me the most.
So you mentioned McDonald's. When did it come, and is it the original spot as it is now?
No. No, it was not too far from the Indiana Theater. As a matter of fact, we used to, on our noon hour from high school, we would absolutely fly. I'm embarrassed to tell you since I was your teacher. But we would fly to Terre Haute and go to McDonald's for lunch. See, that wouldn't be allowed now for sure. But we all loved it so much that we would go over there and get a fish sandwich and try to get back in time, and if not, we'd get a late pass for activity period.
Has McDonald's changed from your time to now?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, the prices are a lot different. They're a lot fancier now. The menu is much bigger. They didn't have breakfast or anything like that. And it was just mainly, actually what it reminded me of back then was what the kids' meals are now. It had more, it was just like a small hamburger, a small fry, and usually a small drink, it's what you would get. And now it's just supersize everything. It's just bigger, and they just pile more and more meat on the sandwiches, and like I said, they've really expanded their menu.
Did the food get better or
did it get better?
Or worse?
Well, I guess there's some controversy about their hamburgers, if they're even that healthy for you. So, but I guess the variety is better, and it's certainly been a hit. So most people apparently love it. I don't think the fish sandwiches had such a unique taste back then, and to me, they don't seem the same. For one thing, it's like a third of a piece of cheese on there, and that little squirt of tartar sauce. We're used to, they had, it was so, you could never bite into a fish without the tartar sauce. It would drip out, sometimes on your clothes. It was too much. Now it's a lot different. They've cut back on a lot of that. And the flavor's just doesn't seem to be the same to me.
So on long car trips, did you have the fast food restaurants at hand, or did you have to stop and carry your own lunch?
Oh, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I was just telling my grandkids about that. When we would come, we went to Florida every year because my parents had friends in Bradenton, Florida. And when we would travel, no, there were not many fast foods. There were not easy access to gas stations. You were miles and miles between things, lots of billboards. You would drive by lots of poor homes. I can remember going to a Big Boy restaurant. I can remember just craving chicken noodle soup, and we went to a Campbell's chicken noodle soup, and we went to a restaurant one time, and they had it on display, if you can imagine, the cans of Campbell's soup. And so I was just thrilled. That was the best meal I'd had. And Dad would get upset because we wouldn't eat, but they were like humongous. They give a hamburger, it was gigantic, and we couldn't eat it, and it was maybe not what we really wanted. We'd get kind of car sick. There was no air conditioning. We'd have to put the windows down, and then your hair would just flip all over all over the place because we had ponytails. But I was telling my grandkids we would play a game, an alphabet game, where you'd have to find a sign that started with A, and whoever got through to the end won. A, B, C, D, E, all the way. And we had certain signs that we would always look for the Q's and the Z's. And we were talking about the fact that they have TV in their car now, and they can watch DVDs on the way, and they've got their headsets, they can listen to music, and they've got their tablets, they can play games. And my tablet was a little rainbow tablet, they called them. It was just like a little drawing tablet, and that was my tablet. And they would usually get us a big, one of those big lollipops that are all different colors, and we'd pretty much lick on that all the way to Florida. And we'd fight a lot because we didn't have a lot to do, and we'd get on each other's side and that kind of thing, the side of the car, and we'd want to lay down. And those hills weren't easy access. gas stations, restaurants, none of that.
So you mentioned laying down in the car. My parents, they used to be able to lay down in the back window. Was it like that?
Absolutely, and that's where I either got the back window or the floorboard, and my sister would get the seat. My older sister and my younger sister was usually was at first up front between mom and dad, and then as she got older, she got the window, and I was always in the floorboard. And at that time, there was a hump in between a pretty big hump, so I'd have to pack it full of pillows to try to make it more flat. But I could still feel that hump on my back. And it got really hot down there, too. Yeah, kids have it made today.
So how have the cars changed?
One thing is the colors. Well, of course, they were a lot bigger, and they were more distinctive. They had really unusual designs of cars back then, and you could tell them a mile away. A lot of them had really big fins on them, and my favorite was the 57 Chevy. I still love the 57 Chevy, too. It was my husband's first car. The cars are more comfortable now, and they have air conditioning now, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing, because there was a time where you could choose to buy your car with or without air conditioning. So that's a definite plus. But the colors of the cars, I miss that. I can remember when my parents would get a new car, they'd bring a book home and we'd look at all the different color options. And now it seems like they're all, dark gray or silver or white, or, they're just not as distinctive or eye-catching,
So was it a common occurrence to have a car accident back then?
Was it what?
A common occurrence to have a car accident?
Well, as a child, I don't remember hearing much about car accidents like you do now, but then we didn't have the media available that we have now also. I do remember hearing about that Bill Kasumpis he was my friend's father, that he had a bad car accident. I do remember that. But no, I don't. I remember my aunt one time having it was more like a little fender bender, but no, I don't remember seeing wrecked cars or hearing about it. I'm sure it happens, but maybe not as frequently. There might not have been as many people on the road. Maybe the cars didn't go as fast. Definitely, that is a problem, is the texting and driving now. That is a big concern that I have, that too many people do that.
So how did the price of the car change?
Oh, it changed a lot. I think my husband, when he bought his new car, it might have been $2,000. I think a pretty nice car you could get for around that, and then a house, you could get a pretty nice house back then for about $8,000. So I'm still in shock over that. That change.
So the price of stuff has increased?
Yes.
Did Marshall have all the stores it has now?
No. I was trying to think of the ones that are gone. Caldwell's is gone. Martin's, Macy's Hardware, Blankenship's, Grab and Hammers. That was a dry goods store or a clothing store. I think there was one called Wilfon's. There was Hedges, Tom's Cafe, Restaurado, Kroger, and lots of little grocery stores. My parents owned one of them. It was Harlow's Market, and there was kind of one in every neighborhood. And we had the Tasty Freeze and the Dog and Suds. They're gone. We did not have McDonald's, Walmart, so many gas stations. We had some, but they were smaller ones, you know, when they're in town. The Glass Shop used to be one, Kenny Little's. And no, it's changed a lot.
I'm running out of questions to ask you. If you have anything you want to talk about, go on ahead, or we can end this.
Anything I want to talk about. I guess I might mention the when I very first started teaching school, I knew a family member of every student that was in my classroom. And by the end of my teaching, that was kind of rare. There was lots of new people that had moved to Marshall, and I didn't know near as many people or students' families as I did in the beginning. And I saw the curriculum change. It was, for instance, now reading is being taught in kindergarten. And those kinds of things have changed a lot.
So when did you first start teaching?
When did I first start teaching?
What did you?
Oh, what?
Yes.
Well, it would have been fourth grade. I first started teaching fourth grade.
And what did you teach in fourth grade?
All the subjects in fourth grade.
So when did they start learning to read?
Well, during my most of my teaching career, it was first grade. When I was teaching kindergarten, because so many children went to preschool, there were a lot of children that were ready to read when I was teaching kindergarten. So I did do a little bit of that with students that were ready. And then I the first year, and then I presented it more the next 2 years. It wasn't a requirement, but it was something that I wanted to offer, like I said, if they were ready. But generally speaking, it was first grade for most of my teaching career. But now it's kindergarten. A lot of changes.
So did you have prom during your high school?
Yes, we did.
What
And
was
we
it
also,
like?
Oh, it was very exciting. We did not spend as much money on dresses, though. I mean, even nobody went completely over the top on dresses that I remember. I mean, they were nice dresses, but they all pretty well. They weren't covered in sequins and looked like something from Hollywood. You know, it was just more, it was a long dress, and they were all pretty. But they We wore gloves. That's something that's different. We wore long gloves with our long dresses. That was the style then. And I remember we were very happy when the band used to kind of play what I called 40s music. And we were so happy when the Beatles showed up and some of that music started to change. We loved that.
So how has the music changed?
Oh, well, that was the beginning right there was the Beatles, the music. Although I love the 50s and 60s music. You know, there were the doo-wop groups and just so many wonderful songs. And the Beatles group it changed music, I think, forever. I started to tell you too, when you asked about the prom, we also had, we would have a homecoming dance, a Christmas dance, a sweetheart dance, and we had, and then we would have prom. So we always had 4 dances a year that were kind of big deal where you decorated and really dressed up. And they always had a queen in her court.
So I'm guessing the sweetheart dance was on Valentine's Day?
Uh-huh. Yes.
What was Valentine's Day like back then?
Well, as a child, it was very exciting. We usually just decorated a sack, and we would hang them on the chalk tray, and then everybody would put their Valentines to each other in the sacks, and parents would usually bring in like treats, gigantic heart-shaped cookies or cupcakes or something, and it was always really a fun time. And then in later years, you know, you'd always hope to get something from your boyfriend. We didn't do the flowers. I think they do flowers now, where different colors one for love, one for friendship, that kind of thing, that are delivered to the school. We didn't do anything like that.
Has any of the holidays changed?
Well, I think a difference from when we grew up to now is I think people kind of work the holidays around their schedule. And, you know, I hear a lot of people that say they celebrate them early, you know, depending on, you know, when their family can get together. And it seemed kind of like it was written in stone back then, you know, that you only did Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving Day, and the same with Christmas and that. And I think that's a good thing that people, you know, are able to adjust that to their own schedules, because everyone has such different schedules now, that work schedules, and some people, you know, work weekends and 4/12s and nights and different things like that. So that's very different also.
So when you were growing up, you weren't able to work on Sunday, right?
Well, a lot of places were not open on Sunday. My parents did leave their grocery store open at one point on Sundays, I guess, because I remember one time a lady coming in the store and saying to her daughter, she was an older lady, and she said, "I thought you didn't trade here because they stayed open on Sunday." And I remember hearing that comment, and the daughter trying to quiet the mother, you know, because she didn't want her to say that. People wouldn't even, a lot of people wouldn't even hang clothes out on Sunday, you know, because that was a common practice then too, was to hang your laundry out.
So a lot of things have changed since.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Yeah, it's very, very different. I just told my husband the other day, I said, we used to say, look at all that his mother experienced in her lifetime, and we've experienced quite a bit ourselves.
If you have anything you want to talk about, you can, or we can just end it.
Well, I can't think of anything else.
Neither can I. So I'm going to end it right now.